Hey folks, this is Frankly Vegas, where we eat as you'd eat. We experience places anonymously so that we can report about them honestly. Today we're taking you to the All-You-Can-Eat Buffet, located inside the Palms Casino Resort in Las Vegas. And today is my first time being back at the Palms Casino Resort since it reopened. Their AYCE Buffet has been on my wish list, but I've been deterred by the horror stories of the excruciatingly long lines waiting to get in. But now I have no more excuse to procrastinate checking out the AYCE Buffet, since they now take online reservations for the Wednesday and Thursday lobster dinner to dine there. If you watch this video until the end, we have something that will make it easier for you to book your reservation online for their Wednesday and Thursday lobster dinner. The Palms AYCE Buffet offers a $65 lobster and snow crab dinner on Wednesday and Thursday nights, running between 2 p.m. to 9 p.m. Let's check out what Palms All-You-Can-Eat Buffet is offering on its buffet line during its lobster and snow crab dinner theme night. Let's first start out with the section called Smoke and Fire, where we start out with their cornbread, followed by baked beans and candied sweet potatoes. Next up, we see beef brisket. And next to it are made-to-order tacos. Here we see andouille sausage. And then here is a selection of salsa, sauces, and toppings such as pickled onions, chipotle salsa, and tomatillo salsa, chicharrones, classic barbecue sauce, tangy barbecue sauce, cilantro and onion relish, cotija cheese, sour cream, and then there's limes, pico de gallo, and salsa macha. Let's now move on to a section that the Palms Buffet calls the Hearth. Here's what I believe is their pasta station. And then, these are the ingredients and items that you can choose to customize your pasta. The meat choices available include chicken, shrimp, and sausage. And the toppings you can choose are tomato, bell peppers, garlic, Parmesan cheese, mushrooms, and onion. The sauces they offer are bolognese, Alfredo, and marinara. Here we take a look at their pepperoni pizza. And then this is Chef's Special Pizza, which looks like a vegetarian pizza. Next up is cheese pizza. And this is roasted salmon and couscous. Here are some lobster tails and whole cooked Maine lobster. There's actually another spot to grab lobster, which we'll see later on. Here's a sign at the buffet limiting you to one whole Maine lobster, as well as one lobster tail per person per trip. But you can make as many trips as you'd like. This policy makes sense to control the lobster that the buffet gives out, so that not one person can try hogging up a whole bunch of lobster, while allowing nearly everyone to have a chance to grab some lobster. Here we see jalapeno slices, cilantro, slices of red round radishes, and diced white onions, as well as lime slices. There's some pickled chilies, crushed chilies, salsa rojas, lime. Here's also some dry chili mix and oregano. And here I just picked up some birria ramen. The next section coming up is the roastery section. Let's see what the Palms All-You-Can-Eat Buffet has on tap here. We see roasted vegetables. We have some esquites that are coming out. Here's the green bean casserole. And here is raw horseradish as well as creamy horseradish. Here are some sauces. What we see here are cranberry sauce in front, chimichurri, romesco sauce is the orange-colored one in the middle, and grain mustard chimichurri is in the back. Here we see top sirloin in the back, and au jus sauce in front. And here we see some roasted jalapenos. Here we see pork loins and some gravy. Okay, this is mashed potatoes. And here's some brown gravy next to it. Here's mac and cheese. It looks like they use some shells for mac and cheese. I like how different buffets use different types of pasta for the mac and cheese. This is baked chicken. This is smoked ham hocks and greens. This is called aqua pazza, with the fish looking similar to something like halibut, sole, snapper, or swai. And if you're looking for the drawn butter for the lobster, all you'll need to do is turn around from the hot stations and look for the soups at the salad bar, and that's where you'll find the butter for dipping your lobster. Here we find steamed white rice. And then here we see seaweed salad, spicy mayo in the back, and here we see sambal chili and some soy sauce packets in the back. Here's chopsticks. And then there's spicy tuna poke. That's the Thai cucumber salad. There's lobster fried rice and Thai chicken stir fry. And this is their vegetable pancit. So here's their hot crab legs. And here we also see lobster again as well. So we see that the Palms All-You-Can-Eat Buffet is serving lobster in two of their sections, which are the Hearth section and the World Pan section. This is the whole cooked lobster. And these are lobster tails. And then there's barbecue pork buns. And then that's their shrimp chive dumplings. This is the cocktail sauce. And lemon wedges. And red tartar sauce, which looks interesting. This is a section called Revival. And the first item up that we see is wild rice. Next is the Southwest quinoa. And this looks like roasted Brussels sprouts. Here's their crispy chili soy tofu. This is chop suey, which appears to be a healthy and light version of your typical chop suey. And then here's some baba ganoush, tabbouleh salad, some hummus, and finally fattoush salad. So at the salad bar, which they call the greenery, we have potato salad and 3-bean salad. And then there's orzo pasta salad. And this here is gemelli salad. And this one's called golden beet salad. This one is aqua chile. Here's fresh fruits: cantaloupe, watermelon, honeydew, oranges, pineapple. And here are wedge salads. We have pre-peeled shrimp. Here's the cocktail sauce for the shrimp and lemon wedges in the back. We see snow crab legs again, but this time they're chilled as opposed to the hot crab legs where the hot foods are. So there's seafood available in multiple sections. Here we are continuing at the salad bar. There's julienne carrots and cucumbers, tomatoes and red onions. Here we see a huge assortment of toppings and dressing for the salad bar, or greenery as they call it here. They offer blue cheese, corn, mandarin oranges, Parmesan cheese, mixed cheese which looks like a blend of possibly cheddar cheese with a white cheese, bell peppers, shrimp, chicken, kidney beans, garbanzo beans, bacon, black olives, Asian dressing, Italian dressing, eggs. And the last three are Thousand Island dressing, blue cheese dressing, ranch dressing. Here we have Caesar salad, mixed greens, and mixed berry salad that's just loaded with spinach greens. And here we have red wine vinegar and olive oil. This is simply labeled as assorted bread. These are probably wheat rolls, sourdough. And then there's single serving butter spread for the bread. And here appears to be a type of flatbread that's infused with herbs. Here at the salad bar, we see there's drawn butter. They also have spicy drawn butter, which you can see some pepper flakes in it. And they also have shrimp albondigas. All right, now let's check out the dessert spread at Palms AYCE Buffet on Lobster Night in the section they call Sweet and Light. First off, we see a Dole Whip soft serve machine, which is so great to see here. Just the idea of having unlimited access to Dole Whip at an all-you-can-eat buffet sounds amazing. We got bread pudding, s'mores brownies, cherry buckle pie, peach cobbler. Here's a dispenser of Hershey chocolate. I see some toppings here: peanuts, marshmallows, miniature chocolate chips, maybe peanut butter cookie crumbles in the front, Oreo cookie crumbles in the middle, and some coconut shavings in the back, it looks like. Now let's see what they offer for ice cream and gelato. There's a vegan vanilla. That's a strawberry sorbet. Double dark chocolate. Banana. Espresso. Coconut. Lemon sorbet. Ube purple yam. Strawberry cheesecake. Mint chocolate chip. Mango sorbet. All right, and here we have pies. We have what looks to be blueberry pie. These are some huge blueberries. All these have no sugar added. This looks like a lemon pie. A chocolate cake of some kind. This here looks like a cheesecake. And these look like the slices of the same cakes we just saw above. We see some croissants, brownies, and what looks like a tropical jello shot. Here looks like chocolate raspberry mousse. And then there's scones. These might be scotcheroos or turtle bars. And then chocolate chip cookies. And then another chocolate cake with what appears to be a nutty maple topping on top. Here are some more muffins, maybe blueberry muffins. This is maybe a sugar cookie. Here are the cannolis. Here's small cups of strawberry shortcake. Some chocolate cookies with some nuts in it. Tiramisu. And what looks like oatmeal cookies. Some meringue cups. This looks like some Rice Krispies with a thick layer of what looks like chocolate fudge. This appears to be an Oreo fluff dessert. And this looks like a panna cotta. These are Jellos. Here are more muffins, and these look like bran and chocolate muffins. And powdered sugar donut holes. So that's their dessert selection. And that's the entire buffet line at the all-you-can-eat buffet at the Palms Casino Resort during their lobster and snow crab dinner on the night we visited. The variety is decent, the stations are clean, and they took a couple of extra steps to cater to the lobster theme tonight. So overall, everything is looking promising so far. All right, let's dig in and get a taste of the food served by the Palms All-You-Can-Eat Buffet during their lobster dinner night. Let's start out with this slice of beef brisket that looks very promising. And above it is some aqua pazza with a tomato-based sauce on top of it. Let's dig into the beef brisket and see how it tastes. The beef brisket looks like it has a pretty good amount of marbling to it, and you can see some parts of it have a thin smoke ring to it. There's a great bark or crust to the beef brisket, and we can see this really fatty piece right here. The bark is surely a sight to behold, especially for beef brisket served at an all-you-can-eat buffet. You can see that this beef brisket seems to be quite tender. It's definitely really well marbled, and it's nicely smoked. To me, the standard brisket I've had is typically dry and very tough, but this is really nicely cooked. It's tender, although not entirely and completely tender. Some parts of it are still tough, sinewy and chewy, but not too bad. This was one satisfying beef brisket considering I'm eating this at a buffet. Overall, I dare say I've had briskets worse than this in Texas. It's not as outstanding as the brisket at, say, Pecan Lodge in Dallas, or brisket from top smokers in Austin, Texas, such as La Barbecue or Brown's Barbecue, but the beef brisket at the Palms AYCE Buffet punches above its weight class in a surprising way. So in short, I'm impressed. Next up is the aqua pazza. What I noticed immediately is that as I shake the fish, you could see it bend and flop a little bit as opposed to some other fish at other buffet places, which are stiffer. It really isn't the best sign when fish is too rigid when you pick it up. So cutting into the aqua pazza, the fish is super tender, confirmation that it was very nicely poached. That tomato and onion reduction is very pleasantly done. It's not overpowering, and those flavors have imparted into the fish meat, providing a balanced, savory flavor to the fish. The next item we're trying out are the ham hocks and greens. The greens are nicely cooked. There's a little bit of heat to spice it up. There's some tiny bits of pork in it, but it's not terribly rich in savory flavor. Meanwhile, there's the trademark faint hint of bitter flavor, and the greens have stayed nicely firm without being undercooked and being too rough. Overall, their ham hocks and greens is pleasant. Next is mac and cheese. The pasta is nicely cooked through, the cheese resembles Velveeta, and the mac and cheese have a good amount of melted cheese with a creamy texture. Otherwise, this is a decent mac and cheese. Next up are the mashed potatoes and gravy. The mashed potatoes are very creamy in texture. As far as the flavor goes, the mashed potatoes have a little bit of staleness to it that gives it a signature prepackaged taste. I'd say I've had better mashed potatoes and gravy at other buffets. Next are these slices of pork loin. It's not a bad piece of pork. There's some fattiness on the outer side here. The meat is lean, so it definitely has a lean texture to it that you can feel, but it's not completely dry and tough. It's actually somewhat tender, and it's not bad. Now the next thing we'll try is their top sirloin. The temperature appears to be at least medium well, if not well done. It looks like there's no more pink color to it. It's quite a pretty thick chunk of sirloin that's quite firm. It's quite tough to cut through. There are some gristle and fascia that are really tough to cut through, unfortunately. After I've cut through this sirloin, you can still see that the meat is quite brown in the middle. It certainly took quite a bit longer and more effort than expected to cut through this top sirloin. But the thing is, the marquee item for tonight is lobster and not top sirloin, so let's move on. Let's now try some zucchini and squash from the pan of roasted vegetables. They're very nicely grilled and have taken on a deep, smoky flavor that I actually enjoy. The zucchini has a slight, subtle sweetness to it, and the squash has both the sweetness and a tiny hint of expected bitterness in it too. They taste fresh to me, so there's a crisp and a snap to it. Very nicely done. Next is some green bean casserole. The green beans have an enjoyable salinity, are perfectly cooked, and has some crisp to it, and an expected grassy note. These green beans are quite nice. The beans have not become soggy from the cream sauce, which is nice and silky and goes well with the beans. I enjoyed eating this green bean casserole. Next up, we're moving on to the main event, which is what we're here for tonight, which are the lobster and the snow crab legs. This is a small piece of lobster tail meat. This particular piece of lobster meat is quite salty. And in this plate, we have few snow crab legs, and we have a whole lobster that's not too shabby and not too small. What's nice is they offer these empty buckets to dump our shells into. Now here you can see me taking a crab leg and breaking the claw off from the rest of the leg. We can see that the AYCE Buffet has partially scored or cut through the claw, which is a convenient touch. The shell breaks apart quite easily and nicely. The meat separates from the shell really easily and cleanly as well, suggesting that this particular crab might be quite fresh. You can see another score in the claw right here, in a direction that's different from the previous cut, which gives you a few different ways to break the shell apart, so that you can get as much claw meat in one piece as possible. That's really thoughtful of the team at Palm's AYCE Buffet. We can see a bit more of the crab meat from the claw here. For this particular piece of crab meat that I'm eating, the initial taste on the tongue is slightly strangely bitter, but it sweetens up quickly afterwards. Now I'm dipping this piece of crab meat into the drawn butter to get some butter on this nice fat, plump piece of crab meat here. Here's another crab leg where there's a cut going across the narrow side of the leg in the middle of this segment of this crab leg. You can see how easy it is to snap the segment open to easily reveal the crab meat inside. And notice how nicely the fresh meat separates from the shell. Most of the crab meat that I ate was on the sweeter side with a touch of brine to it, with a rather firm texture that's not mealy or crumbly or watery, which I think speaks to the relative freshness of the crab at the buffet. Let's move on to the lobster. When it comes to predominantly eating lobster here, the Palm's AYCE Buffet provides two options for doing so. One way is to just get the lobster tails only, and the other way is to get a whole lobster. And what's really nice, if you get the lobster tails here, is that the Palm's AYCE Buffet team provides the lobster tails piggyback style, where they've cut the top of the lobster tail shell lengthwise and then lifted the lobster tail meat out to sit on top of the shell. But one end of the meat is still attached to the inside of the lobster fantail. By piggybacking lobster tails this way, not only does it look impressive, so that presentation is spot on, but it's so easy to serve, and the lobster meat is so easy to access. This brings me to make a huge point to appreciate about the Palm's all-you-can-eat buffet, such that they didn't need to make lobster so easy and convenient for us to eat, but they went out of their way to add that extra touch to do so. You'd think the management and ownership of the Palm's Casino Resort would want to control costs and wouldn't want to make lobster at an all-you-can-eat buffet so easy to eat. Maybe I should stop right here and stop giving them any more ideas. Anyhow, sometimes you almost don't notice these extra touches unless you're paying attention to it. That's how seamless the experience is here. So let's pull the lobster tail meat apart from the shell. Dunk it into some drawn butter and try it out. That definitely was a good chunky succulent piece of lobster. That tail has a good amount of balance in flavor and texture with an enjoyable chewiness to it. It's very plump and doesn't taste like it's overstayed in the freezer too long. And since it tastes predominantly fresh, as opposed to being stale, it's mildly sweet. And the texture has a moderate amount of firm springiness or bounce to it. There's nothing too mealy about the texture. And this is a different lobster tail where we've discovered a hidden gem underneath this particular flap of meat. When we peel back this top thin layer of meat, you'll see what I think are lobster eggs or lobster roe. Here we also see a good amount of lobster roe clinging to the body of the lobster. We're now dunking this large piece of lobster with some lobster roe on it in some butter, and we'll take a bite out of it. I gotta say that bite was pretty nice. This particular piece of lobster meat was not the sweetest and freshest I've ever had, or have had even tonight, but it's still relatively fresh. The lobster roe is pleasantly crumbly or grainy, and it's enjoyable that way. Some of the lobster have what appears to either be some dark seasoning or lobster roe clinging onto the underside of the shell. The last few bites I took of that lobster tail was quite salty actually, but the rest of the bites of that lobster tail I just ate has a level of saltiness that was controlled, so that's not bad. Let's open up this lobster claw by using a seasheller. It's been a long while since I've used a seasheller, so it definitely looks like I could use some practice. So, that's not exactly the cleanest or best cut, but we'll do whatever we can to access the lobster meat inside and not have the shells fly over and hit people at the tables around us. Here, I managed to pull out a decent piece. It won't win brownie points or awards for presentation, but it's the best I can do for now. The meat in the lobster claw tastes like what you'd expect from a standard lobster claw. It's a decent lobster claw that tastes a little bit salty, and some parts of it start getting quite salty. There's the natural mealiness to the tapering small tips of claw meat, and that's entirely expected. But it's nice that we're able to take large chunks of it out of the shell without the meat being soggy or having the meat deteriorate and becoming mushy. This is a nice, decent lobster claw. Meanwhile, for this whole lobster, it was quite easy to pry apart this lobster to separate the tail from the body. This is a nice sized tail with a beautiful red color on the shell. Here, we see myself in an attempt to wiggle the tail meat out of its shell. It only took a few wiggles and not much effort to pull the meat out of its shell quite cleanly, which has been a consistent theme tonight that speaks to the relative freshness of the lobsters as well as the crabs that we've had so far. And before I bite into this lobster tail, let's remove the vein that runs down the length of it first. Now, with a clean, pleasant, nice-looking tail, let's dip it into the drawn butter again and have a bite of it. I think this lobster tail is just standard. It's not the bounciest, chewiest lobster tail. It's not a bad lobster tail. Ultimately, I wouldn't turn this lobster tail away. Let's compare it with yet another piece of lobster tail from a different lobster. This particular lobster tail is slightly firmer and bouncier than the bites we've had from the previous lobster tail, so it tastes fresher. Now let's see what else is inside this lobster. Let's peel it back. So here we're able to see the guts, the tamale. Normally, I'd eat the tamale by spreading the shell wider, maybe cracking it more in the process, then lifting the shell up to my mouth and slurping from it. Or I'll use my fingers to pick at the tamale. But today I'm going to be a little more civilized and use utensils to eat some of the tamale. I think tamale, whether it's found in lobsters or crabs, generally tastes like it could be considered a delicacy, one that's even more elevated than lobster meat itself. The tamale is so tender, creamy, and briny. It definitely has more of an earthy version of the flavor of the ocean, as I expected. And it's quite good. Tamale seems like something that pair well with pasta or rice, or even something sweet, like maybe even as a spread on lobster tail meat itself. I know the FDA has warned about the levels of toxins and PCBs in lobster guts, so it's a good thing I don't have frequent opportunities to eat this. Here's a look at the meat from the knuckle of a lobster, which attaches the claw to the body of the lobster. One great thing about the Palms all-you-can-eat buffet on lobster night is that there are multiple places to get lobster, so that it's easy to get. My typical encounter for themed buffet nights is that usually the headline or marquee items, whether it's seafood or steaks for example, are only provided in one spot, and there's usually a long line for it. Plus, the speed at which the kitchen brings these items out might be on the slower side, so it might feel like it's a way to help draw crowds, but falls short to provide the crowds what they're coming for. So I really appreciate the AYCE Buffet being so accommodating and living up to what they are headlining. A suggestion that we have while eating the lobster is, if you can squeeze lemon into butter while it's hot, the flavors from the lemon infuse much better into the hot butter. When you dip your lobster into it, you get a nice potent tanginess on the meat along with the savoriness of the butter. So the temperature of the butter makes quite a difference to giving the lemon flavor a punch. Another tip we suggest is to have some wet wipes handy with you so that it helps cleaning up your hands a little better after being hands-on with the lobster and crab. Next, let's talk about birria ramen. Let's check out the noodles and beef inside the cup. They really didn't skimp on the beef since there's so much beef in here. The beef seems quite tender, as you can see by how easily it falls apart on its own. And it's rich with lots of fat and marbling in it. Inside there's some noodles that look quite orange, such that the noodles have absorbed quite a bit of the broth, or consommé. When trying the noodles straight up, we notice that the ramen noodles have definitely soaked up the ramen broth or consommé. The noodles have a nice flavor to them. They have held up their integrity, even though they may have been sitting on the line for quite a while. The noodles haven't soaked up so much of the soup to start becoming a mushy, dissolved mess, so that's good. It's definitely salty and steeped in chili peppers. Here's some cilantro that was intended to be sprinkled on top of the ramen. And here we get a view of how several bits of it stuck to the egg. Now, let's try the egg straight up from the birria ramen. So it appears that the Palms AYCE Buffet put in the effort to braise the egg, and I think it had potential. However, this particular egg that I ate has a strong sulfur flavor to it. Also, I feel like they could have maybe braised it longer for more flavor. It tastes more like a regular hard-boiled egg. I guess I was expecting some flavor to be infused into the egg, either due to the braising or from the ramen broth, but none of that seemed to be the case. Meanwhile, everything else about the birria ramen is pretty good. For the next round, we have gemelli salad here, some aguachile, tabbouleh here, some baba ganoush in the back here, some chili crisp soy tofu, an orzo pasta salad, and chilled pre-peeled shrimp with cocktail sauce. Let's try the chili crisp soy tofu first, while it's hopefully still crispy. Interestingly, the chili crispy soy tofu has a thin outer crust that has notes of rice in it, maybe possibly from rice vinegar. The crust is very lightly flavored with that lightly steamed sweet rice fragrance. We didn't really pick up any heat from the chili despite its name, but the tofu has a little bit of that deep fried oil flavor in it, but not overpowering and not too bad. Next is the chilled shrimp. The shrimp is at a nice temperature and it has a delightful bouncy chew to it. It's also nicely savory with a bit of brine and quite fresh. Let's dip the shrimp into some cocktail sauce. The cocktail sauce has a bite. It's really zesty and with quite a zing, which is quite good. Next, we'll try the orzo pasta salad, which is nicely fresh and is tossed with some red onions, cucumbers, tomatoes, with everything being lightly oiled. The pasta is very delicate. This is their gemelli salad. The pasta retains a little bit more of a slight, gummy, doughy texture inside that's quite enjoyable to eat, which is tossed with an ample amount of red onions, cucumbers, olives, and tomatoes, all of which is also lightly oiled. This is a nice salad. The baba ganoush has a light eggplant flavor as opposed to a deeply roasted eggplant flavor to it. Otherwise, it's nice and creamy in texture. Next up is the tabbouleh. The tabbouleh has its usual flavors, such as the tangy bursts of lemon, the light freshness of mint and cucumbers, savory and sweetness of onions, earthiness of olive oil, and then parsley as its base. But it tastes like it's been sitting around for a while. It's slightly soggier than I expected, and not as crisp, and is somewhat lacking in structure usually expected from fresh parsley. This is their aguachile. The shrimp in the aguachile is quite fresh, and has a somewhat nice firm chew to it, and it has a potent lemon flavor which is quite refreshing, while having a hint of the zingy sweetness of onions. And now here's some poke with what appears to be raw tuna as its base. The poke provided quite a kick. It has those roasted garlic bits on it, which gives a nice contrast to the fresh, succulent firmness of the tuna, as well as a balance against the slight tanginess of that fresh tuna. The tuna is well drizzled in seasoning that might have a soy sauce base, and it's balanced nicely with that raw tuna flavor. There's a little bit of savoriness to it, and it's pretty good. Next, we're trying the Thai cucumber salad. My first impression is that the cucumbers appear to be fresh, and they felt fresh and crisp when stabbing it with a fork. When eating it, they definitely taste refreshing and crispy, and have the typical slight tanginess that fresh cucumbers usually have. I couldn't detect much of a kick to it, but that may be masked by the potent spiciness from the poke that I had right before I had the Thai cucumber salad. Alright, now let's try some of the sweets offered by the Palms AYCE Buffet tonight. This is a vegan vanilla version of ice cream. Just by dipping the spoon into it, it feels like the texture is on the softer side, as opposed to being firm, which I prefer. Anyhow, it's quite nicely creamy. It doesn't really taste like vanilla. If anything, it has more of a flavor of rice pudding. Our best guess is this has an oat base, but we can't be too certain of it, but that's based on our experience trying oat-based ice cream. And then here's ube purple yam, which has a nice deep potent ube flavor, which gives you that lightly sweet floral flavor with a little bit of nutty undertone. Here's their cannoli, which has a refreshing lemon filling that's nicely light and creamy inside. The crust isn't as crispy and delicate as a top-tier Northeast cannoli, which is understandable for a buffet to make the crust this way to help the crust hold up if it's sitting on the line for a while. But the crust is still nicely flaky considering. This is a solid cannoli. The next thing we're going to try is their tiramisu. The texture is on the lighter side. Definitely not soggy or damp, which is not bad. It has a potent coffee liqueur flavor that is shouting out as opposed to being subtle in flavor. And this is what I think is panna cotta with passion fruit flavor and mini tapioca balls. There are some nice tapioca balls at the bottom. Overall, the texture is nicely creamy. The passion fruit flavor is quite potent, sweet, tart, and floral, yet it's not too sweet. This is a nicely done passion fruit panna cotta. And finally, we have this chocolate raspberry mousse. The texture is nicely thick and creamy, and the chocolate flavor is on point throughout. There's a layer of raspberry in the middle of the cup, and this layer has a somewhat tart raspberry flavor to it that's nicely balanced, not overpowering and not too light. This is a rather nice chocolate raspberry mousse. To wrap things up, you might feel an initial zap from sticker shock at the $65 price of admission at the Palms all-you-can-eat buffet. But after you factor in eating more than a couple of fresh Maine lobsters, especially the saddleback-style lobster tails that makes it so much easier for you to wolf down high-quality lobster at the speed at which Joey Chestnut can take down hot dogs, we think the $65 lobster dinner is an incredible deal. Let's not forget the snow crab legs, too. We were satisfied with nearly everything we selected. As far as location is concerned, although the Palms Resort is located off-strip, it's really not too far away from the strip. The table service came by and took our finished plates away quite quickly, and they helped us empty the shell bucket promptly and frequently, never allowing the shells to spill out of the bucket. When we visited, the buffet was never as crowded as I'd expected it to be. About a third of the tables were empty at any given time, and the line at the stations were never too bad. The contemporary casual ambiance and decor is warm, cozy, and soothing, with its dark wood, earth tones, and with some colored accents here and there to provide some pop. The level of ambient noise was at most moderate, allowing you to carry on conversations without resorting to shouting at each other. Tables were arranged in such a way that it didn't feel cramped, and you don't feel like you're struggling while walking through a tight maze. Based on the weighted average across multiple factors such as food, ambiance, and service, we give the Palms AYCE Buffet lobster dinner a Frankly Vegas rating of 8.1 out of 10, as well as being a frankly approved experience. Here's their weekly menu schedule and pricing. Feel free to hit the pause button to give yourself a chance to review the details more closely. We see that they have a $33 brunch buffet available 7 days a week, which features bottomless mimosas. They offer a $37 dinner on Monday, Tuesday, Saturday, and Sunday evenings. The $65 lobster and snow crab dinner is on Wednesday and Thursday nights. And the $43 prime rib and snow crab dinner is on Friday nights. We also see the pricing for children as well. Here's their menu of alcoholic beverages. And like other all-you-can-eat buffets around Vegas, there's a 90-minute limit that they actually enforce. We were notified when we overstayed by about 20 minutes, so that's just something to keep in mind when dining here. Now that you've watched through this video, if you're interested in booking reservations online for their Wednesday and Thursday lobster dinner, simply scan the QR code seen on your screen. If you're watching this on an iPhone or iPad, you can simply take a screenshot now. Then afterward, go into your Photos app to find the screenshot you took. Then click and hold on to the QR code you see in your screenshot. This will also take you to the online reservation system. If you like this video, please feel free to give it a thumbs up. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button on our channel so that you won't miss any of our upcoming experiences.